I am going to talk about what happened this past Wednesday in Washington, but I'd like to do that by considering the origins of things. I've always been drawn to stories where people are pursuing a fresh start. It's a common theme in literature, both classic books and new ones. In Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain, Huck feels constrained by all of the oppressive forces that are conspiring to civilize him. All he wants is the freedom to live life as he chooses. So he sets off down the Mississippi River in search of that. The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini is a more recent novel about a wealthy boy who's orphaned in war-torn Afghanistan, and that book is all about second chances and new beginnings. We also see that theme a lot in movies, where a character leaves one way of life to begin another. One of my favorites is Silver Linings Playbook, where a man whose life has fallen apart and who suffers from bipolar disorder seeks a path to a normal existence and contentment. There must be a reason why so many stories are told about new beginnings. Sometimes our desire for something new comes out of a traumatic experience. We've lost someone we love, or we've lost a job, or we've lost some aspect of our identity that's helped define who we are. Maybe something has happened on a large communal scale that exposes the brokenness of our society in an ugly way. Or perhaps it's just the accumulation of everyday stresses and strains. But however it happens, we realize we want and we need something new, and that we have the chance to begin again. Or any of those tales, whether it's in a book or a film or it's our very own story, is that moment when we set off on the journey, that first day when we've decided that stepping out matters more than staying put, that it's worth the risk, whatever hard work might lie ahead of us. The best known first day of all is in the very first verse of the Bible. In the beginning, it says. How often, I wonder, have we heard those words and envisioned that mythic kickstart to everything in existence? I remember watching an animated movie in high school science class about the Big Bang, that cosmic moment 13.8 billion years ago, when all the matter in the universe came into existence. I wondered if that was what the Bible was attempting to put into words, the first day of everything that's ever been and ever will be, including time itself, and you and me. According to the Big Bang Theory, the universe will keep on expanding. Time will march along quite happily with us or without us. So the question is, what do we do with this very thin sliver of time that we have available to us? What meaning do we give to that time? Can we be the authors of that meaning? Can we create our own story or recreate a good story out of something bad? In the book of Genesis, day one was a creation of God and a gift. But so is every subsequent day. Every day was a day of firsts, and every day was good. To round out the story, God takes a day off after all that good work. So we can often read that to mean the story of creation ended after a week. Our work is done here. Except it wasn't done. We all know that time marches on, and that means Genesis 1 is really an origin story, not a creation story, and there's a big difference. Origins tell us where we came from, way back when. They explain the why of things. Why do I have this goofy accent? And why do I love tamales? Because I was raised in the Southwest where things are goofy, but the food tastes really good. So that's an origin story. But creation? Creation's not something that stopped after a week. Creation's ongoing, so it's full of first days and fresh starts and second chances, days and moments when we decide and we act to do something new. I can look back and remember one first day after another. We all can. My first day of high school, my first day of being a parent, my first day of living in Pennsylvania. On the second day, it snowed. No matter how we look at it, life is full of first days, and maybe that's the good news we need to hear, especially today. If you're like me and you're discouraged and outraged and frightened by what happened this past week in Washington, then today can be the first day of a journey we're all taking together toward ensuring that that never happens again. The assault on our nation's capital, it was one of the most distressing, sad, and infuriating things I've ever witnessed. It's disheartening to think that enough of our fellow citizens would ever be so misguided that they would confuse sedition with patriotism. I love American history. You can ask Elle. I'm kind of a history nerd. I really like to study our origins. And what you find there is not always pretty. Nativism, populism, racism, conservative reactionism, crazy conspiracies, class divisions, and the fear of change are consistent and deep undercurrents in our culture. It's like a cancer present from the very beginning of our republic. Now, we have built a very lofty creation story, a shared mythology of liberty and justice for all. And when we listen to the better angels of our nature, we indeed aspire to those noble ideals, and we quite often succeed, and that is something to be very proud of. But the ugly origin stories lurking beneath the surface don't always make it into the history books we read in school. We downplay them or we whitewash them because they make us uncomfortable. We don't bother to understand them or seriously address them, or we say, that doesn't matter anymore. The past is the past. Until those malignant elements are stirred up and they erupt for everyone to see. That's when we realize William Faulkner was right when he wrote, "The past is never dead. It's not even the past." Now, the Civil War was the biggest and most tragic manifestation of that cancerous origin story. The true story that slavery and indentured servitude and the exploitation and manipulation of many for the benefit of a few, it was just the cost of doing business. And that is why we've never really stopped fighting the Civil War. Because that origin malignancy has never truly been dealt with. We've just kicked the can down the road. So viewed through the long lens of history, we can say that what happened on Wednesday was just the latest episode of those hateful impulses coming back to bite us. We know because those origins still exist. It's truly not all that difficult to manipulate and convince a significant number of people that they should feel threatened, and that lies are the truth, and that swearing blind allegiance to a single charismatic personality who claims to represent your interests and who stokes your fears, that matters more than your allegiance to democracy and civility and the rule of law. And the better angels of our nature are silenced in all of that noise. They are drowned out in the echo chamber of social media and talk radio and fine-tuned every second to clothe those false and dangerous ideas in the costume of real reality and super patriotism. Whatever you may think of Donald Trump and his enablers, and I can't say what I think of him and those people, because you're not supposed to cuss in church. I think it's important to understand that while he may fade away, although I seriously doubt it, the malignancy he represents is much larger than a single person or any politician. The problem is bigger than partisan politics. Politics is simply the vehicle that's used to carry forward those malignant, hateful, fearful, conspiratorial traits that are woven into our cultural fabric. If those origin attitudes and beliefs were not already there, and waiting to be tapped into and used to acquire power, they'd never become political issues in the first place. So I believe a two-pronged approach is necessary. Let's treat this like the malignancy it is. First, we need to confront the manifestations of this social cancer head on and cut it out where we find it. And that's going to require all of us to take some personal risks, to see what we're doing as embarking on a new journey, and say, today is the day I'm going to do this. So when a family member or a friend or a client or a neighbor or even a fellow church member repeats a falsehood or a nutty conspiracy theory, we must call them on it. We can no longer afford to shake our heads and roll our eyes and stay quiet and hope they come around to seeing the light. And that means some of the relationships we value might get rocky. And we need to stand up and challenge anything that is clearly rooted in fear, in racism, in homophobia, in xenophobia, and the fear of others who are different. We need to point out our ugly origin stories and say, that happened, but that was wrong, and we can do better than that now. We need to challenge the mindset of victimhood and indignant outrage. There are poor people living in the slums of Calcutta who would never dream of achieving the level of victimhood that some of those folks who stormed the Capitol last week hold on to like it's a badge of honor. And just imagine if that white crowd at the Capitol had been black. Think of the carnage. The people who participated in that deluded act have no clue how incredibly privileged they are, because they've been convinced they should be furious. They're so blindly self-righteous that they'll demonize an athlete for taking a knee in silent protest at the treatment of black people, but be perfectly proud to wave a Confederate flag, the symbol of traitors, while attempting to subvert our Constitution. They are blind to the irony in that. As my neighbor Jay pointed out, the mob that attacked our Capitol achieved something that no Black Lives Matter protests ever have. Those so-called patriots killed a police officer. So much for law and order. This has to stop, and it stops when we have the courage to not look away and to say to those people in our families and communities, enough, you are wrong. The second approach to heal any malignancy is to address the underlying root cause to keep it from recurring, or we'll never finally eradicate the origin story darkness that has so defined so much of our history. And we'll just continue fighting the Civil War. So we have to ask and listen to learn, why do so many of our fellow citizens feel furious? Why do they feel put down and disenfranchised? Why do so many of them feel forgotten and disrespected and indignant? Why are so many willing and eager to buy into tall tales that sound ridiculous to you and me? Why are so many people threatened by others whose ethnicity or race or religion is different from their own? Why are so many eager to follow someone in a cultish way and elevate him to the status of a messiah when that person's agenda is so clearly against their own self-interest? What are we missing here? We need to ask that. Because we might know the origin stories, but we cannot presume to know every reason why anyone continues to hang on to them, and we cannot afford to continue looking at those who do and who behave in ways that we find repugnant and regard them as beneath our consideration. We might just want them to be quiet and go away, but they're not going anywhere. In fact, they've been around for a long, long time. We need to know why, and we better find out, and we better act on it fast. If we truly don't want to see repeats of what happened on Wednesday, we need to start that journey of healing today. As a church, we are the perfect vehicle for doing that. Systemic lasting change in health happens one-on-one and in community. It happens here on the ground. When we learn and reach out and risk and work together in love for the sake of others. After all, that is why we're here. Our number one job is to love our neighbor, because love is the only thing that can heal what ails us. And our Zoom discussion on Thursday, January 21st is an important way we'll begin to do that work. I've heard some commentators this week wonder if Wednesday represented the end of something or the beginning. They say maybe it was the last desperate gasp of a dying movement. That's a nice thought, but I think it's totally naive. However, it can be a new beginning, a new first day. It could be the start of all of us working together to truly understand and to heal the origins of this disease. So we have an opportunity and a responsibility, each of us. It won't be easy. But let's remember, Every day is a new day of creation. Every fresh start needs a starting place. Every second chance means actually taking a chance. The good news is that God's been at this creation business every single day for 13.8 billion years. So God knows the ropes. And God knows anything is possible, and every first day is created to be good. It's made as a gift of love for you and me and for all of our fellow citizens. If we listen, the better angels of our nature are singing today. So let's join them and let's get started.